Yeah, we're not sure exactly, all the details of how long we'll play, if we'll play, but Matt said in the team meeting, just make sure everybody's ready to play. Obviously, I think closer to game time, we'll start talking about how much we're playing and playing time, things like that. But I think everybody's got a mindset we're expecting to play.
Jordan, you've seen so much in the last 2 years, so many different situations in games throughout the season. Is there anything this time of year, whether it's preseason, camp reps, that you can really actually learn about yourself, or is it more just wait till the games come and get back in those situations?
No, I think there's always opportunities to learn. That's why I think every rep is so critical because you might have ran a play versus, a couple different looks, different defenses, and then you go against our defense and maybe you haven't ran it against this specific look. So there's so many things that come up throughout a practice with just the rules of the play and how we read it out as a quarterback, how the receivers run certain routes that every rep is critical, and just understanding and being on top of every different look that we're going to see because, when the games start rolling, we're playing different defenses and you're gonna be wishing you had seen every look possible throughout camp and throughout practice to be able to get you ready for the game so you don't make any mistakes.
Jordan, it looked like you were talking to Nate during one of the periods, like you were, I think it was just an individual period. You okay or something happened?
No, I'm good. I was just talking to Nate. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, just talking to Nate.
Speaking of going against your own defense, just how much of a handful is Edger and Cooper out there?
Yeah, no, Coop he's a really good linebacker. I definitely think you guys seen it last year, but I think just the speed he has, and I think the more he is able to dissect plays, and it's hard for these O-line on the run plays to be able to get to him sometimes because he's so quick. But he's a really good player. I think the more he keeps playing, like I said, he's going to keep getting better and better. But he's really good.
With the increased competition in the receiver room since the draft, from your perspective, how the wideouts responded? Do you see any difference from previous training camps?
No, I think they've all responded well. I think everybody in this building knows what it is. It's always competition, no matter what position you're at. So the main thing is just focusing on yourself, trying to be the best player you can be every day. I think those guys have done a good job of responding. We all know that every year guys are going to get drafted. You're never really safe, I would say, in the NFL. So it's all about focusing on yourself, trying to get better. But, I think those guys have been doing a good job. I think the competition always brings out the best. And those guys have been putting in some work.
Jordan, with the first preseason game 2 days away, the season starting in almost a month, how do you feel like offensively you guys are at right now? Are you where you thought you'd be, or how is that?
No, I think we're in a good place. I think we've done a lot of really good things and made some pretty cool plays out there in the practice field. I think it gets old going against the defense every single day, and we're ready to go play somebody else and go see some different looks, see some new guys on the other side. So I think that'll be the fun test is once we start getting into these preseason games and these joint practices to just be able to see, how we shake up against some other teams. And like I said, just how we go out there and perform against, different looks, things that we haven't been going against every day. So that'll be the test.
Jordan, what did it mean to you to put your own story out there in the Players Tribune?
Say this again, sorry.
What did it mean for you to put your own story out there in the Players Tribune?
No, it was very cool. I was, fortunate to be able to have that article come out with Players Tribune, and I think they did a really good job on it. And it's something that, it's my story. It's the real stuff that's happened in my life. So, I think it's very cool to be able to share that. And I think there's some stuff, in my story that, I think a lot of people relate to and have been in similar situations. So, I think to be able to spread that and just have that message to be able to keep going and, whatever things people might be going through, just keep going and keep pushing through. Is really the message of it, but I think it was they did a really good job with it.
What has been the feedback for you, and why did you decide to write for the Players Tribune now?
Yeah, no. So my marketing agent was one who connected me. They approached and wanted to be able to write my story, and he thought that they do a really good job at what they do. So, he got me on board, and I was like, let's do it. And like I said, I think they did a really good job, just making sure everything was, on point with what I wanted and how I wanted it kind of written. So, I appreciate them for giving me that opportunity.
You're not only sharing that with your fans, though. You're sharing that with your teammates, that they understand your background and where you're coming from, right? I mean, that's kind of a leadership thing, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, it's out there for whoever reads it. You know, a lot of my teammates, you know, just getting to know me, they know a little bit about my story and things like that. So I think, you know, diving a little deeper into it is always good for everybody. But like you said, that thing is for everybody. You know, I've had, you know, coaches and different people come up and say they've appreciated some of the stuff that's in there, and they relate to some of that stuff. So, you know, that's what it's for.
Jordan, the title of it, was that a new decision? How did you land on that? And none of this was supposed to happen?
Yeah, no, we threw around a couple different name options for the title, and you know, they ultimately threw that one out there, and I said, sure, let's roll with it.
Are you upset at all that your birth name wasn't Michael Jordan Love?
No, I'm not. I'm glad it's not. That'd be tough looking up Michael Jordan and seeing MJ pop up every time. So, you know, I'm glad my name's not Michael Jordan Love.
You've played with Rome, obviously, for 4 years now. Just about as good as he's played, what have you thought of what he's done day to day?
No, I thought, yeah. I mean, like you said, I think Rome has been one of those guys who's always been pretty consistent with, you know, how he plays, how he's able to attack the ball and make those contested catches. But I think coming to this camp, I think he's had the right mindset. You know, he attacked the offseason the right way. You know, we put a lot of work in California, and you know, I just love where he's at mentally right now. And like I said, I mean, he's playing pretty lights out right now and making a lot of good plays when the ball's in the air. Which is one of those things that, you know, is expected from Rome, and he's done that so many times. But I think just the headspace he's at, you know, attacking every day and trying to find ways to get better. Even when we're not on the same page sometimes and the play might be incomplete, you know, we're talking after and trying to figure out, you know, how we might do things differently. So I love where he's at right now.
He came in right away and started making plays in his first camp. He played early. What's the biggest area that you've seen him grow since 4 years ago?
Yeah, I think for him, I think it's just when you get out in the game, you know, I think getting into that playing role his rookie year, you know, I think there's a lot that just it's a learning curve. You know, you're trying to take in a whole offense, and obviously, you know, you're playing with A-Rod, who has been doing it for a long time and demands certain things. So I think it's just a lot on your plate, and sometimes in the game, you know, things might not translate or it might not look as smooth as it does in practice. So I think for him, just continue to keep stacking days and be consistent on the field and do the same things he does on the game field as the practice field has been the biggest thing. And just understanding every look. And, you know, I think for him too right now, the way he's running routes and understanding what the coverage is and how he needs to beat it and just do little things with, you know, the twitchiness of his body when he gets to the top of routes and just understanding how to run routes, I think, is what's really separating him.
Jordan, I know you've talked about a little bit wanting to use your legs more. When you would look back on your 2024 film and watch it during last season, how often would you look at yourself and say, oh, that was a chance to take off? And was it more injury related or just your desire to keep the play on schedule, would you say?
No, I think there was a good amount. You know, I think every game there was a couple of options or instances where I could have took off and run. And, you know, I think early on some of it was with the injury, just not wanting to, you know, get out and do as much. But I think even later in the season there was a lot of opportunities for me to, you know, you look back and you're like, man, I could have took off and run. So a little of it is just, you know, understanding what the defense is doing, you know, what coverage we're getting, you know, how the D-line might be playing some of those games where they start twisting and doing different things like that, understanding where the, you know, the holes in the pocket might be to have opportunity to step up and escape. And then, like you said, just understanding that maybe sometimes if the play's glove, maybe not go straight to the check down right now, maybe take that extra second to find a lane and get out of there and create an opportunity with your legs. So I think half and half with injury, and then just understanding when those times are to take off and use your legs.
How do you practice that when practices are scripted and nobody's allowed to touch you? Just getting used to game scenarios of you taking off.
Yeah, that's the tough part. You know, you always got to put yourself in the game and practice, and obviously the D-line's staying away from us, and they do a good job of that. But there is some times when, you know, there's a hole in the pocket and you feel it. You might feel man coverage and you just take off and run. So I think just as much as I can keep that up and keep, you know, not forcing myself to do it, but just being conscious that, hey, if the opportunity presents itself, you know, make it happen in practice because, you know, that's how you're going to make it happen in the games.
What's the biggest difference in Jordan Morgan this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think for him, he's understanding the offense a little bit better, and I think, you know, it's tough when you're going guard to tackle and moving around and, you know, hearing different calls and things like that. But, you know, I think for him it's just continue to keep building the understanding of knowing what to do at each position, you know, and that's the tough part when you're moving around, especially being a young guy. But I think he's done a lot better at just competing, going out there at the O-line and competing with every rep that he does. He's taking pride in it. So I think for him it's just continue to wrap his mind around the whole offense and playing both positions.
Jordan, do you need preseason reps at all? Do you need any preseason snaps to get ready for week 1?
Yeah, I think it's always nice to get a couple preseason snaps just to put yourself back in that, that game mode mentality.
From a 30,000-foot view, you entered this camp, 3rd year as a starter. What things specifically did you have in mind on what you want to work on in your game and to further hash out and develop?
Yeah, I think the consistency and accuracy is the biggest one. I think what we work on in the offseason is always having that balance in the pocket. So just continue to get into camp when you start getting that live rush around you, just trying to stay as balanced as possible and as clean with my feet and not getting into any instances where, I'm a little off, I might start hopping around, things like that. So just trying to stay calm in the pocket, be accurate on all my throws, and keep understanding where I need to go with the ball. I think as a quarterback, once you develop that pre-snap, already kind of knowing what the defense is going to do and kind of have a good picture of where you might be going with the ball, and then as the play plays out, just being able to dot people, I think that's the best you can be at that position. So just continue to keep building that understanding of the playbook and where I need to go with the ball in every play, and then, like I said, the accuracy and the balance of my feet.
Are there any things that
Go ahead.
Are there any things that Sean is doing differently with you as your position coach compared to when Tom was your coach? Are there any significant differences just in kind of how he's training you?
There's not really too many differences. I think maybe drill work. There's a couple new drills that we've added, things like that we do in individual, but not too much is changing, which I think Sean did a good job, being in the room with us last year and kind of understanding how Tom coached and went about business. So, I think he got a good taste of that. But I think there's a couple drills that Sean's added that we do in Indy that have been pretty cool.
Now that Savon has been healthy, he's been able to get more involved in the offense. Just what have been your early observations of him and just adding another explosive weapon to the mix?
Yeah, no, obviously he missed a good amount of OTAs, and getting him back out there has been pretty cool. But I think the biggest thing is just when he gets the ball in his hands, I think he's a pretty good runner. And I think obviously watching his college tape, he's a pretty hard guy to tackle. So I'm excited to see what he's going to do once you get in preseason, get some guys actually trying to tackle him and bring him to the ground. But I think the same thing for him is just wrapping his mind around the offense. And, I think not having OTAs for him, it sucks because you're missing a lot of valuable reps. So you kind of got to get thrown into the mix in training camp. But, I think for him, just continue to keep understanding the offense, where he needs to be on every play, and not thinking as much out there. But I'm excited to see him in preseason. I know he's a good playmaker once he gets that ball in his hand.
Do you do that? Like, do you study tape? Did you look at Matthew? Did you look at Savon? Or do you just do more of when they get here, you get to learn from them and build that connection? Or do you watch their college tape and see what they've done?
No, I'll go watch their highlights for sure. Especially when those guys get drafted. You just want to find out who you got, who you're working with, especially if you don't already know who these guys are. So, yeah, I definitely like to go, especially, receivers, tight ends, running backs. I like to go watch their tape, see what kind of player they are.
Jordan, how much of a say do you have in how many reps you get in the preseason games, or what is kind of that process like?
Yeah, it's kind of, me and Matt will talk about it. It's kind of, at the end of the day, Matt has the final say. Whatever he's kind of feeling for the offense, however many reps we want to get, whether it's a drive, whether it's a quarter, and just basing that off how our bodies are feeling, things like that, and obviously how everybody else is feeling, because when you're out there, you want to have the one group out there and be on the same page with those guys. So it's something that we'll talk about, we'll figure out, but I don't expect too much, but I think in the past we played a drive and sometimes we played a quarter, so it'll be around there.